And so in school, I sing in choir, and we had a pretty good choir, I guess, for high school. It's hard to measure that. And then when I came over here, Dr. Nicholson was the music person. It was basically a choral. And I majored in English, and I minored in music. And I made A's in music, and I worked my fanny off to make B's and C's in English, because I did not come from I came from a blue-collar home where there wasn't reading. But the music stuff, I love theory. I love to do dictation, because I used to play tunes on my team. So anything that they would bring up, I know how to do that, I had my own little system, so. You will be doing that, Chris.
Yeah, I still have to figure that out.
So it was choral then. So when I got out of college, I got a teaching contract out at Madison Heights and started teaching. And kind of put music on the shelf, because I thought, I'm just not good enough to do that. And I want to talk to you honestly here, because that's the biggest thing you're going to grapple with. I'm serious. The biggest thing is, am I good enough to do this professionally and to make a living doing it? And that's a fair question. That is a fair question to ask. We were talking over lunch. There are more opportunities now for kids in music, especially within the church. Back when I was in college, in the Church of God, I think you could have named the ministers of music on one hand in the entire, I don't know how many churches there were. Today, my lands, there are not only hundreds of ministers of music, but there are assistants. So there's a lot of work there. I would have to be very honest with you. Commercially now in Nashville, with the whole downloading stuff, it is tough. And it's probably getting a little tougher. So you've got to be realistic at that point. But you never know. For instance, I started out wanting to sing, and I finally had to come to grips. I was not a great singer. I wanted to play, and I had to come to grips. I was not a great player. But you know what? I found out I was, and there's a place for what I do. It's called producing. It's called taking other people's talents and making them work. So there's a lot of different ways to plug into the music field. Is this answering your question? What is my background? My background is a combination of both music and text. Lyric, philosophy, theology. What do I think is important enough to say and take so much time? Okay, another question. Yes?
Throughout your career with a vocal band with Gaither Music, as genres have changed and how popular music has changed, and your bands have changed, has it been hard to kind of keep up with your bands changing? Because sometimes you have a more country sound, sometimes, like with the group you have now, you have a more popular pop sound. Has that been...
A lot of that depends on the singers. I mean, you have to kind of work your sound around the talent that you have. When we had Guy, we kind of leaned more towards the countryside. He was very comfortable there. He was a very good singer, period. But stylistically, it hit its place there. And to be honest with you, there are some people who vote more for that, and there are some people who vote more for the current one. Michael is more of a pop stylist, and so you go with what you have. David is obviously very classically trained. I think, and you'd be a good bunch, maybe I could pick your brain a little bit here. Obviously, the kind of music that we do appeals to an older demographic. Part of it is because of style, and part of it is because of content. In general, some of the stuff, for instance, on this new project, we are doing a song that philosophically and theologically I think is very sound. What comes to your mind when people say you're going to reap what you sow? What comes to your mind?
What goes around comes around. I mean,
Yeah, what goes around comes around. What else? How many of you think of negative things about reaping and sowing? Yeah. How many of you think about positive things when it comes to? Well, that's interesting. Maybe I had never heard that scripture ever used in a positive context. It's always been used in a negative context. We had some friends, Donnie and Reba, who wrote this song about grandmother talking to a kid planting a garden and saying, son, you got to listen closely here. You're going to read what you sow. And when the chorus releases, it says, sow mercy, sow grace, sow kindness, sow faith. Now, I'm a salesman, and nightly for the last 2 months, I've been saying, sing this. And they're singing. And I say to the crowd, you sing it. Sow mercy, sow grace, sow kindness, sow faith. And it seems like they are beginning to get it. Now, interestingly enough, when I say that to you, and when I talk about the two ideas I talked about this morning, without any music around it, you listen to it. And for you who know nothing about our style of music, you would tend to dismiss it because of the rapper that came in. It's not a rapper that you're familiar with. I'm not talking about is it good or bad. I'm just simply saying it's not a rapper that you are familiar with. So it's interesting, when I do interviews, I always asked the question, why do you do what you do? And why do you still do it? I'm 76 years old. That's old. I mean, why are you still doing this? That's a very fair argument. I always say the same thing. I still do it for two reasons. Number one, I love the art form. I love to hear 4 guys come together, 5 guys like this, to make nice sounds. And I believe in the message. I believe in that message this morning about giving it away and being responsible so you can even give it away. So a lot of things shape how we even have an audience, period, doing what we're doing is still a surprise to me, because I watch artistry, the contemporary artistry, for a long time. Everybody has this, and they have this, and I don't care who they are. You name it. I mean, they're going to have. Toby Mac is really surprising that he's done this and stayed up there for so long. That's pretty amazing. I mean, from a popularity perspective. But most people are going to do this, level off, and then do this. Mainly because people have heard it, you know. And there's always a newer, cuter, more charming kid coming along to sell a new idea. Is this answering your question?
It does. It does.
Yeah. So, I know Otis is interested in vocal, quartet style of thing. Any of the rest of you guys interested in that particular brand? Okay. I see a quartet right here now. See a bus in your future. Okay. But the bus takes diesel fuel that costs a lot of money. Okay. More questions? Yes.
When you started out, did you have the vision of the whole entrepreneurship side in mind, or did that just kind of...
That's a very insightful question. From time to time, I get asked this question, and I'll give you various forms. They have said, now, do you consider what you do a ministry, entertainment, and sometimes they will say business? And if I were to answer all 3 of those, I would say yes, yes, yes. Because if there's not good business, there's not going to be any more ministry. And also, I've answered this another way when they say, you consider what you do entertainment or ministry. I've said, I don't know, you're asking the wrong person. Why don't you ask the guy who bought the ticket? Was it entertaining? Was there any ministry in it? Now, our purpose, I always have the bottom line for me is I want to get their attention. so I can sell them an idea that could change their lives. So I'll use whatever technique, humor or anything I can do to say, listen, this is important. Like this morning, to me, it's important that you learn those two values, responsibility and generosity. Now, there are more values that you can learn. Now, whatever you wrap that in is something else. Now, the question he asked, what happens when what you believe and the art form that you put it in creates business? I had two, and I want you to listen carefully. When the phone started ringing back in 63, 64, we had two alternatives. I could either turn that over to a Nashville agent who many times would sell me by the pound, and I don't like that. Or I could answer the phone myself and say, where are you? How far is it? What do you want us to do? And make that decision for my own. I did that in the early days until I could not answer all those calls anymore. Then I hired a person inside to do that, so that I could inform him as to how he's going to handle the Anderson Symphony Orchestra, or how he's going to handle Rick's talent or anybody's talent here. I mean, so then all of a sudden it's involving a business. We did a studio for the same thing. Do I want to keep getting in the car every time I'm going to Nashville, or do I want to, I got 3 kids that God has given to me. Do I want to be responsible and try to make some sense at home with the kids? It wasn't I want to get in the studio business. It could make my life simple, more simple. Do I want to turn the recording and both audio and the visual over to somebody else? Or do I want to have my finger on it myself, so that what I'm trying to say and how I'm trying to say it? And I hit on this morning, we just wrote songs that we believed in. And all of a sudden people were writing us from all over the world saying, can I have a copy of that song? Yeah. And so you have to print them off, and it costs to print them. So all of a sudden you're in the printing business. Can I have a copy of that song so I can listen to it? Those are all outgrowths of something that you believe. I would go farther than that. I think most secular businesses are growing at that point. People who honestly believe in their product. I know, I know Annie Ann, who did Annie Ann's pretzel. She's a good friend of mine. She just wanted to make pretzels. They happen to be a whole bunch of people who wouldn't eat her pretzels, So when that happens, as I said this morning, and I know the Cathys that started Chick-fil-A, So when that happens and somebody else wants to buy your product or buy what you got to do, then you got to figure out, what am I going to do with the resources that God has given me? And to have 3 minority students to come up to me this morning after the chapel and say to me, thank you for your generosity, because I am here at Anderson University studying because of the generosity that was generated for something that I would have done for nothing.